Hello, I'm Mitra Sorrells in the PhocusWire studio, and I am joined by Jack Ramsey. He is CEO of Tripstax. Welcome.
Hi, how you doing?
Very good. Glad to have you join us. So, Tripstax, you talk a lot about how data moves around within the business travel industry, the complexity of some of those integrations, and how this impacts both TMCs and the corporate clients. Give me a sense of how Tripstax is trying to help with that issue.
So I think business travel and travel in general has become, there's lots of different players providing lots of different services. And in order for a lot of those players to provide their services, they have to get data from lots of different places. And so all these connections between service providers keep getting built. Historically, the industry kind of relied on the GDS as the central kind of data repository. And now we're seeing lots of different channels to make bookings and lots of different channels to hold profiles. So actually, for us, we're thinking about the GDS is a great aggregator of content sources, but actually, is there a new way to aggregate data post-booking? So we bring that all into our core, the Tripstax core, and then we feed that out centrally to our own technologies and those of other third parties. So we're trying to focus on simplifying on behalf of TMCs how they aggregate the data they use to better service their customers.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, because all that data is no good if it's kind of all in disparate systems.
Exactly.
And
And I think the other thing is when it's in disparate systems, it then loses a sort of standard. So you have lots of, like, if you want to enrich certain data with, for instance, we've just formed a relationship with Thrust Carbon. When you want to bring carbon data to post-booking information, if you've got lots of different data sources from different places that aren't normalized, it's really hard then to bring that data in and enrich it. So with us centralizing and kind of tokenizing everything, we can just ping it over to Thrust Carbon, ping it back to us, and then the entire TMC's booking flow is full carbon data. So it helps in many ways.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, how do you think, we hear a lot of talk at times about comparisons between innovation and development technology-wise in the travel industry versus some other industries, that maybe sometimes the travel industry lags a bit. How do you think the business travel sector in particular can do a better job with the innovation and moving forward?
I think it's a really interesting one, right? I think if you look at industries that we've seen true technological innovation and kind of fast-moving change, the foundations are newer. So the idea of how data is processed and how data moves around are newer. You look at fintech, for instance, financial technology isn't quite as old necessarily as the GDSs when they were formed by airlines.
Right.
So there's less complexity and less legacy that are the foundations behind it. So if you look at our industry, I think I think all the technology we need as an industry to be seen as a really innovative industry is there.
Yeah.
We have it. We've seen on the stage at this event, like loads of people, my peers, presenting really innovative pieces of tech. You ask them what their biggest problem is. How do I simplify getting the data I need from my TMC customer, my corporate client, standardizing it so that I can use it in my service that I provide them?
Yeah.
So I think if we can simplify and fix the sort of foundational complexities, and
Right.
That's where we need to innovate first, then we're rife with future thinking individuals who can take us to new heights.
Well, so that's interesting because you just mentioned the thinking, because I was just about to ask, is it a little bit the challenges of those legacy systems and then also a little bit of a legacy mindset? Is some of it the mindset?
I think so. And I think another thing I've noticed here and in other events recently, there are lots of people, we see sort of lawyers coming in and spinning up businesses in our world. And there are lots of people from different backgrounds coming in. And they're sort of stuck. They get stuck and they're saying we're stuck because of that legacy thinking, a legacy way of thinking. And I think it's protectionism.
Yeah.
I think there's protectionism on a legacy commercial model. But I also think every node in the chain still has a place. I think there needs to be redefinition on what place that is.
Yeah.
And I think there are some players in the chain that have been all things to all men for a long time, and that needs to change.
Yeah.
And they need to understand how they're going to pivot within that. And I think we've seen a couple of people again at this event talking quite openly in front of the masses about, at some point in the next year or two, there will be fundamental shifts in how the industry flows for the benefit of everybody.
Right.
But that'll mean there are some players that are going to have to change and adapt, and it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah. Some will be leading it and some will be following, I guess, the effort. Yeah. You've used the phrase, or maybe even coined the phrase, pocket innovators. So tell me what you mean there.
So I think take ground transportation or carbon offsetting or ancillary services or duty of care. There are a bunch of different areas of the industry where there's some really innovative players.
Right.
And a lot of the time they're really small businesses, like 3 or 4 people. They've had a really good idea. They've got a bit of seed money. They've created something that is profound and everybody kind of wants a piece of it. That in our eyes, they are pocket innovators, and we embrace them. We befriend them. We love them, and we want them in our platform as much as anything. But it still doesn't, it sort of distracts us, I think, as an industry from what we need to do to enable them to grow faster for the benefit of the industry. And so, back to that kind of complex, and everybody here is talking about it.
Yeah.
Stalwarts of the industry as well as the babies of the industry.
Yeah.
As soon as we fix that and we get some standards, and I don't think it's impossible, then these pocket innovators, they can really fly and it will flourish.
Yeah, that's interesting. So give me a sense of what you have seen now since Tripstax has launched. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? And kind of what's your future plan for maybe the coming year?
So I think one thing for next year will be really interesting is we still talk about, and for me it's baffling, offline and online booking channels in our in the B2B space. And I mean, I may be an idiot, but that emerged when the internet emerged.
Right.
Offline was an agent booking flow, and then the internet came along and online happened, but that didn't join the online, that didn't become online quick enough. So we still have this dynamic of offline and online. I talk to, younger friends and say, in my industry, we have some people who provide a human service who use a completely different system. You have to train them on it. And then the actual traveler has the ability to make a booking themselves. And there's some nuances as to why you need both, but they're can't they
doesn't really make sense.
Do it in the same place?
Yeah.
So I think there are some well invested in businesses. I think Spot Nana is one to watch, who are trying to sort of narrow the gap between online and offline.
Right.
I think that we have to be careful. We have to be careful not to kind of diminish again certain nodes of the chain.
Right.
Because there is a place for all of it, but I think there's definitely going to be a narrowing
convergence.
Of that.
Yeah.
I also think the NDC world, I think we'll start to see some, normality in commercial models, especially in the GDS world. A lot of deals have been done between airlines and GDSs,
yes.
And they've sort of found their feet now.
Yeah.
And we should see some normality, not necessarily positive, but different. And it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that.
There's definitely some interesting days ahead, I think.
I agree.
Interesting to watch. All right, Jack Ramsey from Tripstax, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
All right, thank you.